Hey Stewart's Chapel, this is Don Pierson, and this is Wednesday's devotion, and I'm at the Count's home, sitting outside here. So, I recognize that some of you that watch these devotions don't go to Stewart's Chapel. But I also know that some of you do go to Stewart's Chapel. This devotion is being pre-recorded. I'm glad. It's actually almost 2 weeks from this day when you will see it. By that time, I will have preached the full length of this sermon. So, for those of you who don't go to Stewart's Chapel and listen, if you go on YouTube, you'll find the full version of this sermon. It will be the message. Well, what is this coming Sunday, Don? What's the date going to be?
15th.
The 15th. He had to think. I didn't even try to think. The 15th. So if you would go back and look at August the 15th sermon on YouTube, it will be entitled, Lord, Call Me Unto the Waters. This is a calling. Now, I'm not going to give you the full sermon. I'm going to give you the passion of it, though. I want to say to you, I've actually entitled this, The Calling to Leave the Boat. But that does not do justice to this calling. I will tell you this before we even look at this scripture. Very few Christians accept the challenge of this calling. Very few Christians even want to think about it. So as a result, this calling seems to hide underneath. This calling does, though it comes from Christ, it actually is initiated by one of Christ's followers. So this calling is very different. This calling is one where you and I say to Christ, call me for. So let's look at the scripture. It's in Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. It is what is entitled in most Bibles, the section, Jesus walks on the water, walks on the sea. So immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. About 13 miles across this sea. It's been a long, long day. Jesus has just fed 5,000 men plus their families. And Jesus is also in a state of grief because John the Baptist has been beheaded, and Jesus is looking for some alone time. So he puts the disciples in a boat and he sends them. Literally, it says he makes them. A very strong Greek word. He makes them go in the boat and leave him. He stays alone. It says, when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. But the boat that he had put the disciples in and made go ahead across the sea, the boat was now in the middle of the sea. In the middle of the sea, in the middle of the night, in the middle of great powerful winds. They were tossed by the waves. John tells us that they are 3 to 4 miles out. Now, I know that don't sound like the middle of the sea, but the Sea of Galilee in its deepest places is 140 feet deep. Think about that, 140 feet deep. It's only 13 miles across. They are 3 to 4 miles out, and they are in the middle of the deep. It's 140 feet deep. They are tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. If you look in every one of these Gospels presentations of it, it makes it very clear there is no storm. I always thought there was a storm. I thought there was lightning, thunder, rain. There's no storm. Every one of them says this is just some very, very heavy, heavy wind that is blowing in their face, is holding them. They are working and working and working, and they've only gone 3 to 4 miles out because the wind is contrary. It's working against them. Now, in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking. Now, fourth watch. The Jews divided the night into 4 watches. The first watch beginning at dusk. That is when Jesus sends them. So they've been through literally so each watch is 3-hour period long. So they've been out there through the first 3 watches. That's 9 hours already. It's in the fourth watch when Jesus comes to them. But notice that the Bible makes it clear that Jesus saw them in the evening. Jesus saw them long before he came to them. So somewhere between the 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., somewhere just before daylight comes, Jesus comes walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. That dreadful terror, that phobia. But immediately, Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Don't be afraid." Here it comes. And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, call me, command me, call me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, no thundering, no lightning, no rain, when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand, caught him, and said to him, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. John tells us that when he got into the boat, that immediately he was on shore. Think about that. Jesus gets in a boat, and they cover 9 to 10 miles instantly. Like that. So what is this calling? What is this calling that Peter seeks? Because this is what it is. It's a calling that Peter is seeking. Peter is seeking a calling from Jesus to come out onto the water. Peter has already experienced the calling of Jesus to come and follow me, to be fishers of men. He's going to experience later the calling of Jesus to go and feed the sheep. This is a calling that Peter desires. The boat's, there's 12 disciples in that boat. Matthew, one of those in the boat, tells this. It's almost like Matthew is down. He's not a fisherman. He's a tax collector. He's not a sailor. He likes the land. He's a land lover. He's not a sea lover. Peter is the man. Peter is the seaman. And he wants to leave the boat. Matthew's back there. Matthew's back there holding on. And the other disciples are holding on for their dear life. They've been fighting for 9 hours. And Peter says, "I want out of this boat. But I'm not going to leave. I'm not just going to get up and just start jumping into, I'm not going to jump into the sea." He'll do that later. He'll jump in the sea and swim to Jesus. He's not just going to jump into the sea with the big old waves. He doesn't ask Jesus to get it all calm and make it a big sheet of ice so he can walk on it. He doesn't do that. Peter wants out of the boat. He wants out of the boat, in the middle of the sea. He wants out of the boat in the middle of the night. He wants out of the boat in the middle of a major windstorm that holds a boat still. What do you think it's going to do to him? He wants out of the boat. But he's smart enough to know you don't just step out of a boat. You need a calling. He hasn't received that calling. So he asks for it. Oh my goodness. Lord, call me out onto the water. Don't call me to come go swimming. Don't call me to just float on this boat. In other words, Peter is saying, I don't want to be in the boat anymore. I don't know where you're going, Jesus, but I know that I want to be where you are. So you just call me out there. I'll take the salt in my face. I'll take the water in my face. I'll take the waves in my face. I'll take the wind in my face, but I want to be right there with you. You call me out onto the water. In the middle of the night, in the middle of the sea, in the middle of an incredible windstorm, in the middle of the waves, you call me out. This cry for this calling is a cry that says, I don't want to be like everybody else. Do you understand that the moment Jesus said, come, everybody else should have been saying the same thing. Matthew should have said, hey, me too. But none of them do. Because they're just like most of us. You see, most of us don't really want something exceptional. We're very, very comfortable with the satisfied, comfortable, secure Christian life that's either on the shore or in the boat. Most of us fall apart. We're in the middle of the night and in the middle of the wind and no boat under us, just the deep, deep blue sea. And most Christians don't ask God to call them on a journey that requires him to constantly be doing miracles. You say, what do you mean? Well, you realize that the very moment that Peter let go of the boat and stepped in the water, when he wasn't holding on to anything, he's not touching Jesus, he's not touching the boat, and he steps out on the water and he doesn't sink but walks on it, as the scripture says, that every second that he is standing on top of the water, Jesus is doing a miracle. With every step, Jesus is doing a miracle. With every step, Jesus is doing a miracle. Every step, every time, do you realize he is making more distance walking on the water than the boat was with all the men rowing. He is actually moving with the wind contrary in the direction of Jesus. The miracle, Peter's no longer just watching miracles. He's seen miracles. He's watched miracles happen to his mother-in-law. He's watched miracles happen to the sea. But this miracle is very, 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 very different. This miracle, he's in the middle of it. And it lasts. The miracle doesn't end when he sinks. Jesus is still standing on the water and reaches down and picks him up, raises him up. And in one of the Gospels, I think it's John, it could be Mark, says, and they made their way back into the boat, which means, by the way, remember there's a wind? What happens in a sea when the wind is blowing against a boat? What happens? It doesn't stay in the same place. Jesus and Peter walk back to the boat. The miracle continues. I want that kind of calling. That's where I'm at in my life right now. I don't know whether it's because I'm 64. I don't know whether it's because my energy is getting less and less. I don't know whether it's because I see death approaching faster. I don't know why. But I just don't want to ride the boat. I don't even want to do well. I don't even want to finish well anymore. I want more. And so I've been asking God for the last few days, the last week, to call me and my church, Stewart's Chapel, out of the boat. I want to live in the middle of the miracle. I'll take the salt in my face. I'll take the waves just beating me. I'll take the wind. But I want to be with Jesus. And I don't want to just walk the bank with Him, sit on mountainsides with Him. I've done that all my life. I just don't want to end comfortable. I love you, Stewart's Chapel.